All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to our panel discussion, Beyond Barcodes. Not beyond blockchain, but can blockchain deliver the solution for Europe's digital product passport? And my name is Jeremy Furster. I'm the Global Enterprise Adoption Lead at Cardano Foundation. So under the European Union's Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, ESPR, the digital product passport is set to become mandatory for numerous product categories starting in 2026, with some categories such as batteries already implementing a digital product passport. This is not just a suggestion, but it's becoming a core requirement for products sold into Europe, where penalties for non-compliance can cost firms up to 4% of their annual revenue. So this becomes now a massive shift to the global product manufacturing landscape. Furthermore, today, for digital product passports, blockchain-based traceability systems are already projected to total 45% of all DPP solutions. This is a significant market opportunity where, according to recent forecasts, the global DPP market is projected to grow from an estimated $2.4 billion in 2025 to $10.8 billion by 2035, which is almost a 350% growth year on year, which is very advantageous today to meet with our expert panel on their initiatives. And so I would like for each panelist to introduce themselves, and while doing so, to explain what industry they're in and the progress they have so far with DPPs. I'll start with the gentleman on my left.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here with you. My name is André Vanyi-Robin. I'm the CEO and founder of Plastiks. We verify that plastic waste was collected and recycled and enable the creation of digital certificates, technically NFTs, that guarantee that the waste was collected and recycled. And these digital certificates are used essentially for three reasons. Reason number one, to comply with environmental law, specifically extended producer responsibility. Reason number two, to create a financial instrument called a plastic credit, which is meant to finance additional positive environmental impact. And reason number three, to create a carbon credit related to plastic waste removal to incentivize the use of recycled plastic in the manufacturing process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. So my name is Pennemans. I'm CTO of Tokenance. At Tokenance, we focus on building solutions, technical solutions for small, medium, large enterprises that go hand in hand with innovative technology, amongst which blockchain and AI. That kind of stumbled upon the requirement of digital product passport in the first place, which led us to partner up with Maurice Mauriac, which is a Swiss watch builder. So I'm wearing the Cardano watch at the moment. You've all seen that being presented yesterday. We didn't really expect it. We've sold a handful of them so far, so we're happy where things are moving, and we're extremely excited to see that the Cardano community is willing to go and jump on that DPP train with us, with that being set in mind.
Yeah, so my name is Adam Dean. I'm a co-founder of one of many companies, but amongst them, Agrow Labs. And Agrow Labs is dedicated to exploring and consulting in the realm of supply chain, logistics, and tracking and tracing supplies and products throughout their life cycle. So everything from, with a high degree of focus on agricultural development. So recently we've been working with the Cardano Foundation on the Originates program, which was also known as the Bolognese wine pilot a few years ago, to really explore what are the standards that we need to do this tracking on blockchain, and how do we make blockchain an actually impactful and meaningful integration rather than just a buzzword for a pitch deck.
My name is Enrico Perfler. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. And I'm the founder of OneMed. OneMed is a a contract research organization, so we support pharmaceutical company and medical device company during their development of medical devices or drugs. And we support them for the regulatory compliance, both in performing the preclinical testing and also during the clinical data collection when they run clinical investigations. And so we deal also with the authority for supporting them in this sense. And we are here because also we are innovating this space, and we are becoming more a digital zero. So we are willing to use the blockchain capabilities to enhance reliability on the data collected during clinical trials and see how we can reduce human error and create more efficiency and create a basis for running AI solution for trust data.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm Lore. I'm the co-founder of Spin. We are a physical and digital infrastructure for smart objects, which means that we connect physical goods to smart contracts, to trace products, as well as authenticate the IP origin, ownership, and what we do is we also include services and transform objects into smart networks of products. So you could call this in Web3 terms a RWA deepin, but it's a passive deepin. So instead of an active deepin like a server or a Wi-Fi router, we connect these products, like the Cardano t-shirt is part of it. So if you see the merch at the entrance, you can experience what it's all about. You can tap the product, claim the ownership on chain, and experience objects in a brand new way. And I'm looking forward. Yeah, and we also worked with the EU in a 4-year project to actually create the blockchain standards for digital product passports, which, as you said, are going to be basically the black swan event, making all of this the new normal in the next couple of years. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, Laura, I would like to start with you. So the EU is technology neutral, but blockchain is becoming very advantageous to use. Should all digital product passports be 100% blockchain, or is a hybrid approach the better path forward?
That's a good question. So we were lucky enough to be part of a project called TRIC, no pun intended, but the name is TRIC. And there was 30 consortium members, and it was on Quadrant's blockchain, which is based on Go. But the interesting thing is that the EU, instead of blocking blockchain and fining people for using blockchain, they were incentivizing in 2020 people to build on blockchain these kind of solutions. So that was interesting, but it's also interesting to see that the data points are not yet confirmed from the EU, so there's still a lot of work to be done, even if the time frame is very short. But it's also not mandatory to put this data on blockchain as well. So it's, let's say, advised to put them on blockchain because of the many benefits that you can have from it, but it's not mandatory to actually be on blockchain. So that's
okay. And for Adam, what fundamental gaps currently exist in supply chain data and product systems that makes blockchain a meaningful solution?
Oh, yeah, that's a loaded one. But there's so many gaps in traditional systems, and not least of which being the disconnect between the end consumer and the various producers that products go throughout their life cycle. Where was my t-shirt made? Where was the cotton for it grown? All these steps that don't necessarily mean a lot to everybody, but to the people that they do mean a lot to, they're very critical. And so that ability to know the entire path and origin of your product from start to finish and to how it got to you, and then, of course, in the, God forbid, worst-case scenario that you have to recall a product, being able to know who it went out to, and maybe identify the source of something like a contamination in an agriculture product is critical. And with existing systems as they are, that can oftentimes involve looking for paperwork that no longer exists. And so we have a little bit of black boxes in a lot of the supply chain as it stands right now. So I think there's great fits, but as Laura said, I think it is still a hybrid approach in terms of the solutioning that we need to do.
And to Ward, what are some of the less obvious but also equally important benefits of using blockchain that the audience may not be aware of?
The way that I would like to categorize them is you've got some inheritance or inherited properties by blockchain, such as native versioning, everything is mutable on chain. So those are the obvious things that everyone talks about, but they kind of make that other aspects that are not necessarily as clear or as logic that are being derived from all of this, like accountability, for example, which lives from the fact that anything on the blockchain is public. Accountability really builds from the fact that when you're posting information on a chain, there's traceability back to where that originated from and who it originated from, which inherently means that the way that we're going to be dealing with information on chain about products, about anything that happens really, is going to be more thought through, and less of an impact will be received from neglect or malicious intent. Things on blockchain really grow into more of an organic, creative, and structural correctness in that sense of the aspect. Alongside longevity is definitely talked towards about. It's more talked towards about from the perspective of data retention, but it goes way further than just that, where data has to not just be there for 10 or 25 years based on the regulatory aspects and requirements, but it also has to outlive systems as well as companies that may or may not be the owner of it. All of that has to be verifiable and proven on chain. That's just a grasp in a bucket of a lot of things.
Very good points. To Enrico, we're still early with digital product passports, and there are many initiatives with blockchain. But how do you see the regulatory framework evolving for the use of blockchain technology, and how can existing solutions remain compliant?
Well, in the healthcare sector, you mean?
Yes.
I think this is a moving target that we need to follow. In the sense, there is a new European regulation also for example, for the medical device sector, and this raised a lot the bar of the quality for the manufacturing of medical devices, but also for tracking what happens after you introduce in the market your medical device. So there are certain post-market requirements, very strict. And this is going to require, let's say, manufacturer to collect a number of data from end user. So this can be physician, this can be patients, and you need to have these patient experience data in order that you can support the real-world safety and performance of a product. Because when you study a new device in the pre-market phase, you do certain clinical investigation with a very well-restricted number of patients, because you want to prove the safety first, and then also to prove that the product is performing as expected. So in this sense, the fact that you have to rely a lot on the real-world data after you introduce in the market the product, and so let's say the car is no more, let's say, driven by Verstappen, but we have also Enrico driving. You collect a number of potential misuse of the product. And if you have a blockchain-based technology and with an app or some digital solution to collect data, you can have, immutable data, but trust on the data that you collect, that everyone can inspect. So also authority can see that you collect the data in the proper way, there are no manipulation, wanted or unwanted, and this is creating what I say, the trust on the data that we see. And I think that the regulation is already going there, but they are not aware of the blockchain. Maybe because they think blockchain crypto, but these are two different things. So, but I think that we are going in the right direction for that.
And to Ward, we were speaking about this backstage. I think it might be important to talk about now is when it comes to regulations, most people, when they think about using a technology, they love to talk about being a standardized approach. and ensuring interoperability. So should every blockchain that deploys DPP, should it function in the same way, or is there room for a variety?
Maybe let me first get back to the question that you asked to Enrico, in the sense that regulatory aspects also often get touch points with audits, and the way that audits are being conducted right now is very periodically, like every year a single or every month a single entity or company is being audited on a specific product or whatever. That fundamentally will change based on the fact that blockchain is real time, based on real world data, where touch points for those audits become more continuous rather than a snapshot in time. And that fundamentally will change that how the regulators will conduct these audits on companies and firms moving forward. Getting back to the actual question, so can you repeat the question for me, please?
Should regulators enforce that every blockchain operates the same way for DPP, or should there be a variety of implementations?
So I believe that there is some sort of base level structure that should be part of any given system or structure that everyone builds upon. Is a base foundation of what a DPP should look like. That being said, it would be unwise to enforce every single blockchain or every single protocol to enforce the same exact systems. That would be like asking Salesforce to adapt the same thing as another platform, for example. They do things in a different way because they serve different clients, different purpose, different objects, different methods. So answer to the question is enforcing complete 100% similarity, no. Same base, different build-ups with bespoke content and bespoke elements that build upon that base, yes, absolutely.
Great. Now I'd like to switch gears and speak more deeper about industry perspectives and the practical implementation value. So this next question I have for André is speaking about the actual eco-design principles for a digital product passport. And for Plastiks, you link recycling and recovery data to blockchain. So how does that make the sustainability claims around a product, how does that make this truly verifiable?
Well, I founded the company 6 years ago, essentially addressing the waste management industry, because the industry hadn't innovated in decades. And ultimately, since the core business model of the industry is built on two pillars of revenue generation, one of them being the collection process of the waste, and the other one being its separation, classification, and sale as a feedstock to the recycler. In the eyes of the public, obviously, everybody's always asking, or we're always asking the question, how do we know that the waste is being collected? How do we know that it's being recycled? And ultimately, the solution to that problem was having a hybrid approach, because you can put a lie on blockchain and it'll be immutable, it'll be transparent, it'll be there forever, but it's a lie. So you need to have a standardized approach towards verifying the data that you put on chain. And over the last 5 years, developed according to ISO standards to ensure global standardization of the methodology by which you can enable the tokenization of the data, essentially looking at what is the business model of the industry. And since the business model of the industry is collecting the waste, separating it, selling it, and shipping it, so you have documentational trail. Invoices, proof of payments, and waybills and bills of lading that are linked to that documentation. So you need to have a way to be able to verify this information and provide tokenization. And the same is from recycling to manufacturing. So ultimately, the whole purpose of Plastiks has been to ensure the proper verification of the data prior to its tokenization, using AI and classic verification tools so that people would trust the information that is on chain. A digital certificate, an NFT, which extracts publicly the invoice number, date, type of, and quantity of waste, and its destination, with the underlying documentation being off-chain, accessible only with private key. So by combining global standards in auditing, in verification. And blockchain, the end result is a solution that companies like Danone, who's a partner customer, I gave a case study this morning, Barcelona Football Club, Bayer Leverkusen Football Club, governments in Armenia and Salvador, UNHCR, can trust what is on chain. And that is the way to be able to generate the transparency that is so needed, so that all of a sudden financial instruments can flourish out of this data, and you can create these carbon credits, you can create these plastic credits, because the underlying data is trustworthy in addition to being on-chain.
That leads into some interesting opportunities for new business models based off of DPP. And Lord, how do you see the business beyond compliance with digital product passports?
Beyond clients, you said?
Beyond compliance.
Oh, compliance. Definitely. I think as we were saying before, the DPP regulation is basically making it mandate for every brand in the world selling their products that are textile-based, in our case, in Europe. A little bit like the iPhone now has a USB-C. That's because of European regulation, and it changed all the iPhones in the world, for example. And I think this is what's going to happen, because there's close to 100 billion products in fashion that need to be now connected with a NFC chip or a QR code to a digital product passport in the next 2 years. So the volume of this is phenomenal, and it's probably the biggest upgrade in our infrastructure, almost as a industrial revolution, if you want, because we're going to be changing forever how we're producing these products, how we're managing the information of these products, and ultimately, beyond the regulation, as this kind of black swan, as we were saying, is that now that the products are connected, okay, what can we do on top of that? So you can add services, new business models, games, like these T-shirts have a game embedded that starts at 7 at the 15th floor. So you can test out, how to play an actual game with a T-shirt. And that's just some of the examples. And then you can have augmented reality try-ons. You can have take-back programs for recycling. So the entire cycle of the product changes, and new business models can come out and monetize with royalty fees, for example, so brands can produce less products and monetize what's already in the network, what's already in the market. So every time there's a resale transaction, a 10% royalty fee in our system actually goes back to the IP owners forever. And it's just going to change the whole business model for everybody involved, I think. So.
And then beyond the business model, looking at the product lifecycle, to Enrico, for healthcare and the medtech industry, how does a DPP and using blockchain, how does this help enable more granular device-level traceability, especially when we're looking at knowing when there's a product recall and post-market surveillance activities regarding healthcare infrastructure?
Oh, this is already, from a regulatory perspective, a requirement. So all medical device manufacturer and all pharmaceutical company have to provide to the authority a post-market surveillance system for recalling products in case there is a need or there is an emergency. And so they have whole system for doing this activity, and this activity is every year inspected by the authority. So they need to prove every time the authority goes in their manufacturing plant, they need to provide an evidence, and they also do, let's say, mock-up example of these recalls, and they show how it works. The problem is that everyone has its own system, and there is no harmonization, and sometimes these systems are not so reliable in a way that you can really have a sort of immutable record to check how things were, let's say, performed. And so in this sense, I think that today there is no solution embedding the blockchain or integrating the blockchain for providing this evidence. So this will be a big change, but in the positive way. So it will be, let's say, not a complication, but a support for providing compliance and giving evidence that these manufacturers are doing the things properly. So I see this very, very positively. But we need to create the right app. So let's do this maybe together.
Definitely. Adam, in the agricultural industry, these supply chains are highly fragmented. And oftentimes, like for Originate, our core focus was on proving the proof of origin for where a product came from. But when it comes to who is the exporter, or who is the importer, who is the retailer, is there any intermediary processing done? Oftentimes that information is very difficult to connect to one another. But these are all requirements under a DPP. So how in practice will this occur of connecting all of the dots?
Well, yeah, and I think connecting the dots is, obviously the goal, but obviously also the hardest part of this whole push into the DPP. And yeah, there's so many gaps. I think Enrico may have just touched on it, that a lot of these systems, in the case of agriculture, a lot of times these people don't have systems. They have paper ledgers and things like that they're working with generationally. And so we have to not only introduce technology now to some of the most rural and difficult to access parts of the world, but then everybody's got a different ERP, and how do we make those systems talk to each other? So the nice part with using blockchain, and where blockchain is the perfect fit, is you already have a decentralized global network of shared storage of data, essentially whatever that data store happens to be. And I think Ward touched on it earlier as well, that we need the data to live longer than the companies in a lot of cases. And so there's tremendous opportunity for blockchain to be the correct solution, but it's really going to come down to the standards and how do we drive and promote adoption of these systems outside of Europe, largely.
And to Ward, like, the DPPs may work for certain categories at first when we know the entire supply chain, but how do you see the DPPs actually scaling to a large mass, especially in the small and medium enterprise segment?
It all comes down to interoperability, making sure that, again, we can connect to these systems that already exist, like the ERP systems, the PIM systems. There's a lot of information already there. Making sure that the transition, or actually the incubation of blockchain within these systems, is as seamless, as frictionless as possible. That's the first step. And then it's building from there, making sure that you're taking the right next step into optimizing, modifying, and making a recall back into the accountability with AI that we're working on. And also André mentioned like the ISO standards for collecting information and making sure that the right and correct basic for everything that we do is ready and there to be implemented. That's the key fundamental, and that's the stage that we are right now that we have to set, because if we do that wrong, then there is no scalability and everything will just tip over. That's the fundamental start, and from there we can really keep growing in every single direction, up horizontally, forward and backwards. Not backwards, but you see what I mean.
That's right. Interoperability is key, and so is collaboration. Laura, can you speak on this further? You were a part of a 30-plus member consortium surrounding setting up standards and understanding what it means to be interoperable for a DPP. What were some of the challenges and outcomes from this approach?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was actually a $10 million project that took 4 years to achieve. So these are all very long projects. We've been in this mission since 2016, actually, and the European standards were announced and activated with this Project Horizon in 2020. And it took 4 years, as you were saying, just to basically put together what it could even mean to put this information on chain and how to do it, right? So not only the standards with ISO, but also, what kind of machines or data entries do we need at each step of the supply chain? Because the 30 consortium members were from academia, industry, supply chain, big tech, and we were providing the operating system that needed to interface with all of these players. And from our side, what we were doing is we were providing the software and hardware infrastructure. So on one side, we had to pull the data, but then we also needed to package it from a bulk data of the raw materials at the farm level. This was alpaca from South America. And with Piacenza Cashmere, it's a very old company in Italy from the 1700s doing cashmere and everything. So a very traditional company. They were then tracing this information from the supply chain, but then we needed to basically divide this information into item-level units. And so the complexity there was not only to get the information, but to package it at the item level in every product. And so that every coat, in that case, so they were making coats, every coat had its own web link, its own token, its own verified information by third-party individuals. So also the certification is important. So not only the data aggregation, but also who's certifying and making sure that the truth is embedded in these tokens. And so after 4 years, it was just launched in November last year. And that's when we founded our company in the US, in San Francisco. And since then, we're now helping big corporations like LVMH and others, like we've been doing with H&M and other fashion groups, from fast fashion to luxury, on how to now connect these products, bring the DPPs inside, and how to manage these products with different business models. So it could be sample management, it could be sales, it could be rental. And so that's the interesting part of basically how to then transform these connected products into useful objects that can achieve more. But yeah, apart from that, the process, to answer better the question, it was pretty challenging to follow, let's say, government processes to create a tech product. That was the most frustrating part, I would say. The endless weekly meetings, the slow pace of implementation. I think, looking back, we could probably achieve that in a third of the time with half of the people at a fraction of the cost, to be honest. So I think that lean teams can often achieve much more in less time than these very big projects that require a lot of time and money. So that's my final takeaway from that.
Great. Thank you. Any other thoughts on industry collaboration? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention that at institutional level with governments, there are 198 countries in the world. 63 countries have this regulation called extended producer responsibility. And of course, those that already have it, Europe being the major continent, they haven't adopted blockchain. And waiting for institutional alignment on how to adopt blockchain is a process. Whereas in developing nations, where they have the will to deploy this legislation, they have decided to leapfrog and adopt blockchain from the day one, so that they can actually provide this traceability that they need to build their whole waste management systems. And this concept of leapfrogging and adopting this innovation, the deciding factor was, well, what is a standard that you can follow that is already there? And ISO at a global level was the reference point for this, hence allowing the facility to deploy blockchain in these countries without necessarily having to have a consensual industry approach to how to do it.
Yeah, I always think it's for a congestion period, there's a chicken and egg situation.
Yes.
But now that we're entering into the last few minutes of the panel, I'd like to start the lightning round, where I'm going to ask a question and have everyone try to give a quick answer. And so for the first question is, what is your prediction for the size of digital product passports? And what does adoption look like by 2030? Laura, you want
I
to
can
go
start,
first?
Yeah. Well, in fashion specifically, there's 100 billion products manufactured every year. And just look around you. Probably the ones that have the Cardano T-shirts are the only ones with connected products at the moment. But it's a little bit like looking back in time. You know, everyone had Nokia phones, and then the iPhone came and made smartphones bring internet in everyone's pocket. I think DPPs are going to bring all these objects that you see around you online by 2030, and it's just going to be normal for the younger generation to interact with objects that have intelligence baked in with blockchain IP registered and authenticity. It's just going to be a normal interaction to have these experiences.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, in the medical device space in Europe, we have today 500,000 different medical devices, so it's a huge amount. And but I don't think that every single device will be on chain by 2030, because in the healthcare sector, the adoption of regulation is very slow. I think that there will be early adopters, probably the biggest one, because they can see the value in how much money they can save for the future. So I would say probably 30% will be the adoption by 2030, given the slow, let's say, of this market. But it's super important for patients at the end.
Great. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge industry, but I think, like Laura touched on a little bit ago, governments aren't known for their efficiency. So where are we going to get by 2030 is anybody's guess at this point, I'd say.
I would like to see it by 2030 be the equivalent of a barcode. I don't know if it's exactly feasible, but I would like to believe that there's going to be sort of a regulatory pull, but as well as a brand push, where brands really see the DPP not necessarily as a compliance regulatory requirement, but also an asset to transparency towards their consumers. And that may drive certain industries towards 60–70% of the EU regulated products being with a DPP.
I think that the trend is undeniable that companies are to be responsible for the products that they put into the market. So eventually, all companies will be responsible for deploying DPP and being able to account for the products they're putting to the market. In terms of the waste management industry, we don't see a future where the data is not on-chain, because you cannot build transparency and accountability if there is no verified data on-chain. Yeah. So we see absolute blockchain penetration in the waste management industry within 5 years.
Well, these are all bold predictions, and unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our panel. But now, I think it's very clear that when it comes to DPP, it is no matter of if, but now a matter of when, and that when is now. So let's give a warm round of applause for our panelists.